Hello, my name is Tolg and I exist, therefore I think too much. I'm reading Marguerite, Porete, The Mirror of Simple Souls, and I'm reading the introduction to it. If you follow the series, I got up to like chapter 30-ish and then had questions were asked, so I went back to read the introduction. Now I feel stuck reading it. I rant when I talk and I cuss when I talk as well. Those are your warnings. If you don't like them, you can go away. And if you stay, thank you. So, essentially, what I remember of where I left off was that generally I think the French to English translation may not have been helpful, and it might be more helpful to just learn French. I think I'm on part 17 of the introduction, and it starts, when Marguerite employs the image of the inebriation of the soul, she indicates that if there is any difference of natures, it does not make any difference because of the transforming power of divine love. I don't know if that's the transformation of divine love so much as it's just growth. Understanding your needs versus your wants. But maybe you have to be divinely loved in order to get to a position where you understand your needs versus your wants. Or maybe you just need to be loved in order to get to a position to understand. This difference of natures is the difference between what the soul has become by grace and who God is by nature. I giggled because I think the concept of grace is just dead. People get dopamine off of social credit. And there's been a pretty big movement. I can't say movement, but happenstance. I talked about it a long time ago, and I won't be able to credit the source, but there was like a brief study done in some news article that could have been, baseless, but worth looking into. I find it interesting. Saying that a large majority of the populace in the U.S., while people vote for the underdog, normally they simultaneously and in greater numbers enjoy watching people get their comeuppance. Which is to say, a lot more dopamine is provided to peoples when they, through their own subjective perspective, judge that someone deserves to be hurt and to suffer pain. And it was like an astronomical amount of people, like 80% of the US, enjoy people suffering, so long as they feel they had it too good beforehand and they should know what it feels like to suffer therein. It's a sort of sickness. It's psychopathy, enjoying someone else's pain. My theory on psychopathy, enjoying other people's pain, is that, you don't have the ability to perceive emotions, and instead what you can perceive is control over others. So enjoying other people being in pain, people will react to pain immediately. It's being able to see. It's an immediate response to the control that you have. That's just my theory, though. Anyways, all of that to say, I don't think people understand what it means to give grace, to receive grace, to live in a gracious manner. Oh, and then there's the other concept, when like it's a novel thing to say that an apology is for the individual doing the apologizing. It isn't for the individual that deserves the apology. The good feelings provided from an apology, from saying sorry, is only provided to the person that needs the forgiveness. Otherwise, the pain has already been dealt to the other individual. You're saying that you recognize what you did doesn't make what you did not exist. So people can understand being granted grace and demanding it, but I don't think they understand giving it. Which is why it's incredibly dangerous that we're moving into a system of social credit, because social credit is treated as though it's an objective truth when it is filled with subjectivity and is a system that can readily and totally and absolutely be abused and will be abused. It relies on a society that holds honesty as a value. And our society is not predicated on honesty. That's not a value we hold. So I don't think it's a wise move to be moving towards social credit. We can't even get our judicial system in line with what we've already laid out as what should be done. For Marguerite, this difference is a difference which makes no difference. Nice. I feel like tattooing that to me. Because the soul's union with God is a union of identity between the soul and God, as she makes clear with her use of two other images. Again with the imagery. When the Begin refers to the traditional iron and fire, she insists that the iron becomes fire itself by virtue of the strength of the fire. Transmography. What is that called? But again, also the imagery basing itself in fire. I guess, 12th century wouldn't necessarily be able to see iron melt into fire and understand that somehow, okay, I'm not, a chemist, I'm really bad at this, but that it is, so to speak, evaporating or changing chemical composition. And it would look like it has become fire itself, in that, the flame takes to it and grows on it until it is gone, resource-wise. And that's one of those hindsight is 2020. I can sit now in 2026 and think back and judge based on what someone said in 1200. I'd feel better for it, however, for the time, it's fucking ingenious. Makes sense. Okay, so it becomes fire itself by virtue of the strength of the fire. The soul, Marguerite says, is completely inflamed in the furnace of the fire of love. Union of identity is clearly intended by the Begin, as she insists that the soul becomes properly fire itself, because the soul is transformed into the fire of divine love. Why does Christianity utilize fire so much? Wouldn't it make more sense in the atmosphere that Earth has, to use water as an example of God? Or a tool of God? When she uses the traditional image of water, oh, okay, yeah, whoopsies. It is of a river that loses its name when it flows into the sea. Yeah, okay. That makes sense. And, it makes sense, but it's also better imagery. See? Water should have been used, not fire. The soul no longer has the name soul, but the name of the one into whom she has been melted and dissolved. Okay. It is difficult to see how Marguerite could be any more clear about the nature of the union as identity. There is this book that my dad gave me. What is it? Okay, I'm supposed to be reading it, so it's in my pile of books to read, and I don't remember the name exactly, but it would have done real good to have it readily available. But I've been reading it for the purpose of understanding oscillation. Is a very, very basic part of the book. It's a whole ass book, but it goes over how in a river there is not only surface tension, but there are layers to the surface tension, thus the oscillation. And then underneath there are two different currents normally, so one will spiral in this direction and one right next to it spirals, in another direction, so that the force keeps them separate as they go down. As a river joins the sea, it does not necessarily always become one and the same composited structure. It takes a while because it relies on the makeup of both of them. You know that one area in the ocean where the two seas meet, and there is a very clear divide between salt and fresh water? So I don't know. I guess I make that reference as a means of saying that, I can fathom if God is everything, that means that everything is a part of God. However, that does not mean that they are God. And I think words are tricky in that regard. If you lose sense of what it means to be a part of something for becoming that something, it could very well... What is it? I was just talking about this with my uncle. The Peter Principle. Promote you to a level of incompetency. Sure, your ego may feel great, in a situation promoted to being God, but are you capable of that? As much as your ego may feel good about it, is it going to actually end up crashing under the fucking pressure of concerning yourself as God and not having any of the capacity to see or hear or feel or understand as God does, as everything does? So I think it's dangerous rhetoric to say that your soul dissolves into God. Safe for the ego, but simultaneously unsafe, double-edged sword. A close reading of her use of the images of iron in fire and of water indicates that for Marguerite there are two moments of union, intimately connected yet distinct, which reflect the relation of love and knowledge. I don't know how they reflect the relation of love and knowledge. Yeah, I don't think that's been explained too well. Love becomes knowledge, or knowledge becomes love. Or does it work both ways? Because it doesn't. It hasn't. Is it supposed to? Am I doing this wrong? With the iron fire image, Marguerite insists that the iron loses its own semblance because fire is stronger and transforms the iron into itself. The same principle holds for the transforming power of the divine love of the Trinity, for it, quote-unquote, takes no account of the lesser part as it absorbs or subsumes the desirous love in the soul in the fifth stage. The understanding of the dialectical relation of God and the soul in the fifth stage is transformed by the unity of the Trinity in the sixth stage. I'm still kind of mesmerized and ultimately remain confused on the portal that randomly opens and closes to allow the soul into the sixth stage, and so I didn't progress past that into understanding that the fifth stage is the unity with God. Then the sixth stage is the unity with the Trinity. Wouldn't it make more sense for the order to be otherwise? That the fifth stage would be the unity with the Trinity, and that would help you get closer to that which is everything, because the Trinity is not everything in and of itself. There's one member of that group that is everything, but the Trinity itself is not everything. Seems like the order is backwards. Right, sorry. Marguerite is pointing to the moment when the unity of the Trinity... Oh no, never mind. I didn't even start the next one. In her image of a river flowing into the sea and losing its name, Marguerite is pointing to the moment when the unity of the Trinity drives the soul into the Father. So it was what I just said? The source without source of the Trinity. Okay. Where she receives her virtual existence, losing her name, which is in quotations, which denotes distinct being. That's like 1980s Japan, or Japan before the 1990s, essentially. The soul's virtual existence is given explicit attention toward the end of her book. Oh. I said it in another video just because it's another topic that vaguely interests me. I don't mean that as like I know much about anything. But the vague interest was that wa and watashi and watashi wa being I, or I am, or any variation of self in consideration of the word I, or me, or my, didn't exist before the 1990s. It was an introduction. And it was a hotly discussed topic at the time, because older generations were saying that younger generations were driving themselves further and further away from the morals held by the entire country up until then, which was that they thought younger generations were becoming too self-indulgent by introducing a nomenclature that signified themselves past a name. Yeah, that's what I meant by that. Soul's virtual existence is given explicit attention toward the end of her book. His fairness is greater nearness. What? No. Okay, sorry. His farness is greater nearness. Still doesn't make sense, though. Because from nearby, in itself, it better knows what is far. I guess contrast provides understanding. But it only provides understanding. It does not provide the opposite of what it is. Which knowing always makes her the soul to be in union by his will. Knowing something doesn't change reality. Everybody knows about the Epstein's list, but that doesn't change what is being currently protected in the US, given, the want to protect a male-run society. What is that? Patrilineal? Brain is fogged. Patriarchy. Okay. That word is kind of overused because I say it and I don't want to become a trope. However, again, in sociological studies of tribes in other countries, the healthiest cultures were produced by matriarchies. So there's that. It better knows what is far, which knowing always makes her the soul to be in union by his will, without the interference of any other thing which may happen to her. If you know what's going to happen to you, you aren't bothered about what will happen to you. Then why do horses wear blinders? Because the brain is working overtime assuming what could happen to you. Okay. All things are one for her without a y, and she is nothing in a one capitalized of this sort. I guess it sounds like an incredible position in Zen, where everything just melts. I would have incredible anxiety if that were to happen. Then is she stripped of all things because she is without existence, where she was before she was. Interesting. That's very Buddhist. Thus she has from God what he has capitalized, and she is what God is through the transformation of love. I'm not saying anybody deserves to die for this, but I am saying that that's more than likely why the Catholic Church killed her. Because in that sentence alone, she just promoted herself to being God. And like I've pointed out, 12th century Catholicism was absolutely vying for power against other countries. So, not even other religions, other countries. I personally, again, growing up in the US, believe everybody deserves the right to freedom of religion. I really adore that people here get to practice what would help them understand life and any aspect thereafter or therein. And I think that is a right, a constitutional right worth protecting. In that point in which she was before she flowed from the goodness of God. Yeah, okay. This is the moment of the flash of light of the 6th stage, the portal, which shines from the 7th stage. Oh, was that mentioned before? Oh. Yeah, okay. I also was reading. I skip around from book to book and don't often end reading books soon. Based on interest. But I was reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and there are levels to the lights. I think like the first light upon dying that you see is a bright white light, and then if you were not like absolutely pure of soul and prayed every day and essentially martyred yourself, then don't go into that. And like the next one is a variation of colors past. I think it's like a dull yellow or something, and then it goes to orange and pink, but yeah, it's each color is based on the type of life you have lived, and therein the type of soul you have constructed and where your soul is most likely to fit energy-wise, I guess. So when dead, somehow you're supposed to steer through these colors and find the right one. And it also says like you'll feel that it is... Does it say you'll feel at home, or does it say that you'll feel afraid? I think it's like you'll initially be afraid of it, and you're supposed to work past that fear. I don't know. But this is reminding me of that. Giving the being of the 6th to the soul. What? No. What? Okay, 6th stage, which shines from the 7th stage, giving the being of the 6th to the soul. What? The soul receives a kind of supraconscious awareness of the glories she will have in the next life. That sounds exactly like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which will be her virtual existence. How unfortunate that she didn't get to travel. In a completely different land, this would have just been the rhetoric they were teaching. She would have found home immediately. It cannot last very long because the soul has not left her body. Nonetheless, the unity of the Trinity lifts the soul into her virtual existence as often as the Trinity moves within her. This fluidity between the fifth and the sixth stages is the key to the two moments in Marguerite's notion of a union of identity. The annihilated soul remains in a union with the Trinity in the fifth stage, and from time to time is lifted into her virtual existence in the sixth. Interesting. So it was that the Trinity is in the fifth, and then unifying with God is a virtual existence? Okay, I am going to end it there. I think virtual may be the word that I'm stuck on. Because the significance of the word has changed due to technological advancements, and virtual now may not be what virtual was intended for, the 1300s. I will think about that. Okay. In the meantime, find your Zen. Whatever that means for you. Protect your peace. Eat well, drink well, sleep well, be well. Enjoy yourselves as much as one can. Bye-bye.